Hello, welcome again to Sports Unlocked with Mike Ziegler from the Times, Panja from the New York Times, myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. As ever, if you hit subscribe, we land in your feeds automatically for free, and it's grateful if you can rate and review us. So, the conclusion of a case that's been going on for well over a year, not the Man City one, we're still waiting for that. Lucas Paquetá free to continue playing.
The actual investigation was launched by the FA in August 2023. So nearly 2 full years since he was alerted to the fact he was being investigated. The allegation was deliberately getting booked in order that other people could bet on him. Investigation took a year. The charges were then brought, and the hearing has finally come to a conclusion. So he has been cleared of those 4 spot-fixing charges, but 2 charges of not cooperating with the investigation and answering questions as required have been found proven, and now we await the sanction.
Could it be shown that that non-cooperation led to a lengthier process which increased all the legal costs all round?
No, my understanding is that the non-cooperation is, according to the FA rules, if you have to answer questions during this investigation, it's not like a criminal investigation where you can just say no comment. From what I understand, his legal advice was to not answer certain questions.
Because the result was, it was unproven, right? That's what we have to get to here. That this case ended with this panel saying they could not prove it. There's the non-cooperation, potentially, as you said, by not cooperating. Is that you're right? And does it help you?
Well, I think it's very much a lesser charge, the sort of thing where you get a fine instead of a ban potentially. And I think there's a sort of acceptance, perhaps, that he was just doing what he was advised to do by his lawyers. Not that he was, covering anything up. He was just, just doing basically what he was advised to do. That is that's something I'm sure that the commission would take into account.
Now, this all relates to an investigation into 4 particular bookings in matches. Now, we don't know exactly what they found out around the studies into the patterns around the betting or what Paquetá said, because the full findings haven't yet been released. But obviously, because we knew which the bookings were, they were heavily scrutinised at the time. And I can say, because we did pre-record part of this last week, expecting perhaps a different outcome, which even that I did raise the question about how he could have known when he got a booking in injury time that he'd still be on the pitch then to get the booking.
Well, I don't know if that was part of the defence, Rob, but I'm sure Nick DeMarco would have made that point too, because, it's obviously quite an important one. There was never any suggestion Lucas Paquetá had bet on himself, had been paid to do this himself. So that, I guess, very, very helpful in his case, that he wasn't benefiting financially. He wasn't betting at all, breaking betting regulations. So that, I'm sure, worked in his favour.
And just so we don't give Nick DeMarco all of the love here and all of this publicity, you can find Nick at various websites, I'm sure. There was another lawyer involved in the case as well, a guy called Alistair Campbell of the law firm Level.
No relation to the other Alistair Campbell, the political guy. Yes, Alistair Campbell, the solicitor who was head of the legal team for Lucas Paquetá.
Nick DeMarco celebrating with some Brazilian food.
And according to his LinkedIn profile, he's gone and bought himself a fancy new watch to celebrate. Second, pre-owned, but nevertheless very exclusive.
Yeah, he's been known to showcase his hobbies, which also include, I think, bread making. So maybe a nice loaf at the end of that. But what we learned from this case is like 2 years, as you said, for this one. Manchester City, 7 years, I guess, since the investigation started. Are there any learnings here? What anything going to change?
I mean, I think what it highlights is it's how incredibly difficult it is to bring these cases, and it's what one assumes might be a sort of the fact that they've brought the case means that there's a good chance of a decision in the FA's favour cannot be taken for granted at all.
It's gone on so long, we didn't really seem to have much chat GPT. We might just now put the whole case into there to see what it can throw out.
Good idea, Rob. Yeah, AI can sort it all out.
There is still the Brazilian inquiry, isn't there? Wasn't the Senate there looking into all this? So we had various evidence emerging there.
The Senate inquiry in Brazil that's finished now. It did look into it's match fixing generally, and the one thing it did do was recommend that Lucas Paquetá's uncle Jan Tolentino be indicted, but no players and no one else. So Tolentino, not specifically related to Paquetá. This was more in connection to a case in La Liga, which again has not gone anywhere disciplinary wise, about a player called Luis Henrique, who is now at Zenit St. Petersburg. It was also alleged that he was booked deliberately, and that Jan Tolentino paid him some money. Now, Tolentino always said he was just paying a loan; it was not to do with that. But the Senate inquiry did recommend he be indicted. So, but just to say that was not directly related to Lucas Paquetá.
And Paquetá was never accused of match fixing, but spot fixing, which is elements within matches that could be seen to be manipulated for financial benefit through betting, but obviously now cleared of that.
People be scratching their heads, so I guess, were these bets made on these yellow cards or not, I guess. And if the FA, that's what one of the great mysteries will always be here, is people who this guy presumably knew bet in this very niche market on him getting booked. And, maybe they were just lucky.
Well, obviously the full written findings could shed more light on.
Yeah, they could. I mean, I think people did bet on him on these matches, and that's been shown through the betting companies. But I think there were also bets on him in other matches which he wasn't accused of getting booked. And actually, I think there were sometimes people bet on him to be booked and he wasn't booked. So I guess that probably is an issue. And I think interesting now is, where does this leave the Football Association? They're probably going to have to pick up legal costs, I guess. Could be £1 million or more. So, and what's going to could the player take any action? He was due to, I think it looked like he was going to move to Manchester City 2 years ago, but they pulled out of an £85 million deal because of the investigation, not surprisingly. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens now.
Wait till West Ham then claim they missed out on transfer funds from Manchester City, even while claiming, of course, they want to keep hold of their player.
A real mess there, and so a lot more to unravel.
It's quite a handy week for it to drop for the FA, given that so much has been centred on their celebrations, the fact that the England women's team managed to defend their Euros title. So an unprecedented period of success, really, for the FA. Another moment of drama that brought an end to the Euros in Basel at the weekend, followed by a parade on the Mall by Buckingham Palace on Tuesday with more than 5,000 people there.
Yeah, and you there as well, Rob. I saw interviewing Serena Wiegmann about dancing with Burna Boy. All good stuff. I mean, I think it's obviously a very, very good moment for English women's football. There are also, I've done a sort of big piece this week looking at the sort of issues. Where do we go from here? I mean, one challenge is the Women's Super League is now probably the strongest women's league in Europe. But the number of English qualified players has just plummeted. From 2018, it was 65%. Now it's down to 30%. It's like falling loads and loads every year. So if you're going to have this sort of, the Lionesses, the next generation coming through, it's a bit of a challenge.
But at the same time, obviously wanting to be a global league, attracting some of the best stars from around the world to be in it. And as the Premier League has gone through, how do you balance out being a global destination and a really competitive league with ensuring that homegrown players aren't squeezed out of opportunities, but then also you get England players having opportunities in the US, which of course is a strong league. Jess Carter, defender, went straight from winning the Euros back to New Jersey to play for Gotham this weekend.
We've had the most successful men's squads in the last, decade? With the Premier League being extremely successful, the richest league in the world, attracting all of the best talent. And that's gone partly with the focus on youth development at Premier League clubs. This is the end of that cycle. If we remember Jed Roddy's what's it called, the IPPR or whatever that thing is.
E-triple-P, Tariq. E-triple-P.
Yeah. So presumably that may be a template for the women's game.
If you have a steady stream of people coming through the academy process and they're getting first team opportunities, then probably 30% is okay, and that you can play with it. You can bring up the standard by playing with the best players in the world, as the Premier League does, and the Women's Super League is aiming to do. I think what it needs is more clubs to realise the value of investing. So you have a few like Arsenal, Chelsea, maybe Manchester City, which are sort of putting their hand in their pocket and seeing the value of investing in the women's academies. But a lot of other clubs are not convinced about the business case for doing that. And I think until they do, there is a sort of risk you're gonna have English players struggling for minutes.
There isn't a big system of huge transfer fees. So in terms of using that as part of your business models, now we're only hitting £1 million as the world record for terms of a player. So if you invest in talent, you're not necessarily going to get huge rewards if they then move on.
Yeah, but I think that the first £1 million player is probably quite an important thing. And although it's all comparative, actually, that kind of revenue that you might be able to get in the future is pretty important.
And the other thing is the WSL tries to grow. You need some of those foreign stars to get people going through the gates to fill stadiums as well. So it is that balancing out between growing the league again and who's in the teams. There's never really an impression that there aren't a lot of English players playing in the WSL.
No, I mean, because if you look at sort of, Arsenal and one of the top teams, I mean, Chelsea were domestically sort of triumphed last season, but if you look at Arsenal, the number of England players they've got, it's 5 or 6, isn't it? And Michelle Adjabang was at Brighton, but she was on loan from Arsenal. So you think, there are a lot of Lionesses players there, and we can go and watch them in the Women's Super League. But actually, they are concentrated in a few clubs, and beyond the sort of big clubs, there aren't many England players.
Is there a reason why? Is there a reason why the lesser clubs or the mid-ranking clubs have foreign players? There just aren't enough. Could it just be a supply issue? There aren't that many really talented women coming through at this very moment because the game grew so fast. If you think about it, 3 or 4 years ago, we weren't talking about WSL and the money from Barclays and Sky, and bang, this league starts. Suddenly you need a lot of top-level football talent. There probably wasn't that depth here of that quality. So it might just be a moment in time. I hope and I think it's not that big an issue. It's just part of the growing pains.
And the league did go pro over 8 years ago and started in 2011.
Yeah, but
Yes.
but thinking about who was watching WSL in 2011 versus what it is today, you're talking about a completely different environment. Manchester United, for example, didn't have a team, did they?
Well, no. And there is still a big challenge about how they market the league. I mean, it hasn't been in the week since England won the Euros. A huge opportunity. Much presence really from WSL clubs. You've probably not really heard them out there in any way, seizing on the moment to talk about themselves, to ultimately sell season tickets as well. It has really all just been about the Lionesses who won.
Yeah, I think that's in a way that's understandable. You can do your big launch before the new season starts in early September. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are issues, and I think people involved understand those issues, and this filling this talent gap, I think, is going to be key. But I do think people are aware of it.
Sooner than that, the new English men's football season starting this weekend. It's the lower leagues in the EFL, and a couple of weeks from the Premier League beginning, and it always seems like football's never been away because particularly these ongoing battles over European qualification with Crystal Palace due at Cass as well, Nottingham Forest taking their place in the Europa League. It seems to have been a summer of Nottingham Forest. We've rarely not heard about them this off-season.
No, the Palace issue with UEFA has been ongoing for weeks and weeks. We've talked about it before. Forest and Lyon are involved in the Cass case, which is going to be heard in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, it's a bit weird. So you've got this situation where Forest and Lyon are basically defendants in the case brought by Crystal Palace against UEFA. basically because Palace believe they shouldn't lose out to Lyon in their place in the Europa League, and Nottingham Forest want to take Palace's English spot in the Europa League rather than the Conference League. So, but there's it's more complicated than that even.
Yeah, and this all stems from John Textor, the American businessman who put this multi-club ownership model together, this particular one, or a house of cards, depending on how it looks, because so many other teams are implicated in this as well, including the Brazilian champions Botafogo, who he also owns through this Eagle Holdings. And it's all really unraveling all at the same time. I don't even know, we could talk in so many different angles here. I'll give you a couple. Nottingham Forest sold Matt Turner to Lyon, this goalkeeper, American goalkeeper, while Textor had control of Lyon for something like £8 or £10 million. Suddenly, Textor has lost his control. So the Lyon management have looked at that number and said, this man is not worth this, try to cancel this deal. But unfortunately for them, the deal's gone ahead. They've immediately got rid of Matt Turner to an MLS team. Why are we talking about Nottingham Forest? Because we're talking about Evangelos Marinakis, the Nottingham Forest owner, and reports out of Brazil were saying that Marinakis and Textor are pretty much going into business, with Textor leaning toward Marinakis, asking him for a loan to buy Botafogo out from Eagle Holdings, this club, this multi-club ownership group. Ziggs, you've been looking at this stuff. It seems like an absolute mess. What's Textor said about it?
Neither sort of Marinakis nor Textor have come out on this, but speaking to people close to Textor, they say that he has not asked for a loan from Marinakis, but that they are collaborating on things like academy development in Brazil. We know that they've had player trading links. There's definitely some sort of connection between them.
Huge. And one of the transfers which has raised massive eyebrows in Brazil and beyond is this trade of this defender Danilo, who wasn't really doing particularly well at Nottingham Forest, because if he was, they would have kept him, but sold for 22 million euros to Botafogo, which is a massive amount for a Brazilian team. And we're wondering why. Why has this happened? And then within the context of all of this, it starts to look a little bit more curious. And then you kind of wonder, where are the football authorities? This is like 3 or 4 or 5 different clubs across 2 continents at least, being like, I guess, put under a cloud. Their futures in doubt. Who's playing in Europe? Who's not playing in Europe? And in Brazil, you have legal action bought by an American hedge fund, Ares Capital, which loaned money to Textor to buy Lyon. But why the action is in Brazil is because the security that Textor used to get this loan to buy Lyon was Botafogo. You just wonder what the football authorities are doing, allowing all of this to happen. And as Textor said most recently, as last week, he's just having fun.
It's not just the sale of Danilo to Botafogo from Forest. We also had Igor Jesus, the 24-year-old striker, had been at the Club World Cup, very highly rated. And he went the other way from Botafogo to Forest, and for what many people in Brazil think was a very small fee. And again, very much questioning the values of that deal. But bizarrely, of course, these guys, it goes beyond that, because then they're now sort of co-defendants in this CAS hearing.
And it all brings it back to some of the questions raised about Forest being able to take the place of Crystal Palace, given all their multi-club ownership issues, even if they're not sort of directly impacted in the competition they're playing in next season. Football's been dominating. The cost of it is other sports as well, perhaps, because the World Aquatic Championships is certainly not being shown on TV in the UK. Maybe it's helpful for the sport, otherwise maybe there'd be more attention on the fact a 12-year-old is winning medals.
We trail this in some earlier pods. Chinese 12-year-old swimmer has won a medal at the World Aquatics Championships in Singapore, which is a remarkable thing to happen. 12-year-old guys, can you imagine, at the top of elite sport? But looking at the images, I mean, a great achievement, but that is fair to say, a very healthy-looking 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, I mean, she used Zidi as her name. She won a medal in the 4x200 meters freestyle relay, and got a bronze medal. It's not completely unheard of. I mean, back in 1936, there was a Denmark's female swinger, Inga Sorensen, who was even younger, just less than a month after her 12th birthday, and she also won a bronze medal in the Olympics. So one step further. So it's not completely unheard of, but it is for sure pretty surprising.
You only have to go back 90 years for such a feat, so not completely unheard of.
Well, building up to the NFL season, someone who made a lot of headlines last year when he moved across the US was Lewis Rees-Zammit, a Welsh rugby union star. Obviously, quite a hope in the US. I think that they can get big British names, European names in particular, making a name for themselves in the sport to help grow it ultimately internationally. But he's leaving.
Yeah, he's returning to rugby union. I think it's a massive shame, actually, because this is a guy who had, seriously fast, really good on his feet. If anyone was going to make it from rugby union, you'd have thought he might do, but didn't get to play a single minute of a regular season game. So it's the dream is over, and he's missed out on the British Lions tour as well.
So in terms of his talent, he had played on a Lions tour before. They referred to him as Reese Lightning. How good a rugby player is he?
Yeah, he is very good, and the sort of player you might think could make it as a wide receiver, perhaps, or something like that. But it just goes to show that American football is such a specialized sport that you have to sort of grow up in it almost, that the calls and the whole process. It's not good. Sometimes it's not just good enough to be very quick and very good and very nimble and tried and failed now.
Yeah, this is part of an international pathway that the NFL has opened for athletes from other countries, even from other sports disciplines, to try and make it in the NFL. Some have actually made that crossover. Usually, people who are able to kick the ball through the posts. But some have been able to do that, and I guess it just shows also how many people are trying to make it in the NFL.
I think that's a great idea, Tariq. Another one of those sport unlocked ideas which go into the mainstream. Before you know it, it's going to be adopted by the NFL for future seasons. So put your invoice in now.
And you can message us, sportnotpod@gmail.com, @sportnot on all the social platforms. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.